Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Jodee Blanco. Jodee is an expert in the human component of effective communication. She's the author of 2 New York Times bestsellers, including the seminal memoir, Please Stop Laughing at Me. And she's the founder of INJA, I-N-J-J-A, which stands for It's Not Just Joking Around, the first survivor-led anti-bullying program in the country. She consults with schools and corporations and has taught at the University of Chicago and NYU in New York. And in this conversation, we talk a lot about bullying and really just how to create better interactions in human behavior. We span kind of her full scope of bullying and human communication to talk about what bullying is, how it shows up in the workplace, how we can be better aware of how our words and actions and body language impact others, how we can repair when we have done something wrong, and really how we can just have better relationships at work. And not just at work, beyond work too. I think as you listen to this, we really meld back and forth between work and school and home. And I think if you listen to this and you think, oh, well, this is only about school bullying, you've missed it. And if you think, oh, well, this is only about work, you've missed it. This is really about how do we have better interactions with other people? How do we build better relationships with other people, whether those people are our children, our spouses, our colleagues, our bosses, our direct reports, whether it's helping our kids have better relationships with their friends and peers at school. This is really an episode about human behavior, human interaction, and human intelligence. And so with that, I'm excited to share this conversation with Jodee Blanco. Jodee, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on. I think this will be an interesting combination, like we were just saying before we hit record, of combining some of your bullying work and your communication work and talking about how these things show up in the workplace. Mm-hmm. So let's set the stage here. You have a book out that set you on a certain path called Please Stop Laughing at Me. What's the backstory to that? How did you come to write that? And what did it lead to? Would love the origin story there.
I was in the communications world for many years. I taught comms at NYU and University of Chicago, and I owned a PR firm that really, I was a bridge between the entertainment business in Los Angeles and publishing and corporate in New York. And so I would broker deals and then I would do the PR, and I literally was a PR bridge between those two worlds. And I did that for 18 years. Then in my 30s, I decided, as fulfilling as my career was, I was still haunted by this sense of insecurity. I remember being in a meeting with the chairman of the board of Universal Studios about a film project. And when I walked out of the meeting, I wasn't worried, did that meeting go okay? Did I hit my mark? I was, what if he didn't like me? And I thought, that is not the worry I should have right now. And that's when I decided to write Please Stop Laughing at Me. And also when Columbine happened, I realized, oh my gosh, something's off here. I decided to write Please Stop Laughing at Me, which is the memoir of how I was the school outcast from 5th grade through high school. And as an interesting aside, I represented at the time every major publisher in New York. I was doing the PR for all their lead frontlist titles. And every single publisher in New York, all of whom were my clients, rejected the book. They said that bullying was, quote, a non-issue. There was no audience for this book. And so I bullied.
What year was that?
99, 2000. So
yeah, that tracks.
I bullied a publisher into taking it on. And despite no media, nothing, it was a runaway New York Times bestseller in less than 48 hours. And suddenly, kids started reaching out to me from all across the country, some as young as 4th grade, threatening suicide. So I walked away from my PR firm, gave it to my partner, and I started responding to those cries for help, one child at a time. And that's the origin story of the book. And over time, I've really come to serve two silos. I serve the school world. I'm the founder of a program called INJA. It's not just joking around, and it's the first survivor-led anti-bullying program in the nation. And I've implemented it in hundreds and hundreds of schools. And so that's one sector that I serve. But the other sector that I serve is the corporate sector, because they struggle with compassionate communication and they struggle with bullying too. It's just not in the school cafeteria where it goes down. It happens at the water cooler in offices as well.
Yeah. And if you're willing to share, what was the flavor of your bullying? Was it just outright, was it physical abuse? Was it mental abuse? What did it look like?
You know, O'Brien, it was all of the above. And it's interesting. I was physically abused. I was stoned once, where kids literally threw rocks at me until they shattered my knee.
Oh,
I was teased, made fun of, excluded for the same reason that so many kids struggle to fit in today, simply for being different. And probably one of the worst things that happened, though it wasn't physical, is junior year of high school. I was invited to a cool kids party. I'd never been invited to a party by kids at school ever. I spent all day getting ready. And when I got to the address of the party, my arch nemesis had invited me. But when I got to the address of the party, it wasn't a house. It was a parking lot in a forest preserve. And some of the cool kids came out from behind the trees and they high-fived each other and they laughed and they went on to the real party and left me standing there. And I had many experiences like that, and so do countless kids today. But honestly, and I'll say this really honestly, and I speak for myself, and I could speak for the thousands of kids I've worked with. It's not so much the overt acts of bullying that cause the long-term damage. And this is true in the corporate space too. So if I tell you every day, O'Brien, that you're a loser, that you're stupid, that you're incompetent, after a while, if I'm always putting you down, if I'm always being nasty to you, if I bully you, after a while, you're going to say to yourself, there's something wrong with Jodee. She's a bully. And that's a healthy response. But if all I ever do is look past you and through you instead of at you, if every time you smile at me because you so want my acceptance and respect, but instead of smiling back, I just keep on looking forward, and you can feel my judgment just in my body language and my facial expressions, after a while, that's unlikely to make you say, what's wrong with Jodee? It may make you wonder, what's wrong with me? And the minute someone starts asking themselves that question, that's when we know the long-term effects of bullying have started to take root.
Yeah. I had a woman on Dr. Jennifer Frazier, and we talked about gaslighting. And gaslighting does the same thing where she's written a book on bullying and gaslighting and what bullying does to your brain and what gaslighting does to your brain. And we talked about the negative impacts when that self-talk starts to flip. And yeah, you're right. It's right. Whether it's gaslighting or whether it's bullying, ultimately it's getting you to do the same thing, which is to doubt yourself and to change your perspective on yourself.
Correct. And what's difficult is that whether you're an adult and you have a narcissistic boss or a partner with narcissistic personality disorder, or you're in a school and the popular kids are constantly excluding you and judging you and looking down on you, whatever the circumstance is, the way I define bullying, whether I'm defining it for a school, whether I'm defining it for a ballroom full of school administrators who I'm doing a professional development with, or whether I'm defining it for a room full of CHROs, anything that makes another person feel small, judged, or looked down on. Whether it's something that we do that we know we shouldn't, or something we're not doing that we know we should, is considered bullying. Bullying isn't just what I tell kids, is that bullying just isn't the mean things we do. It's all the nice things we never do. And that sometimes something doesn't have to be on purpose in order for it to be mean.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's start, though, with your own progress for this, because you were in your 30s, you walked out of that meeting with the head of Universal, and you're thinking, God, I hope he liked me. Something clicked in that moment. I guess, like, one, what clicked in that moment? And then two, what does the work look like for those who have been bullied in their past, whether they realize it or not? Like, the people who have that self-doubt, what is the road to rebuilding self-confidence?
Those are both great questions. Let me take the first one first. I remember being in that meeting. I was working on a film called Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey about Andy Kaufman. And one of the principals of the film was my client, and I was involved in a lot of aspects of that film. And I remember we were in this meeting, and he said, Jodee, you're going to have to drop the bomb. You're going to have to communicate this thing, my client says, because you're just better at bad news. And I'm like, okay. And it was fine. I did great. I mean, really, I was proud of myself. When I walked out of that meeting, my concern was, he's not going to like me anymore. And that shouldn't have been my concern as the owner of a PR firm with extremely high visibility celebrity clients. It should not have been my concern. That night, I went to bed and I woke up at 2 a.m. and I saw this image in my head of the title of my book, Please Stop Laughing at Me. And all I had was a shoebox and a marker next to my bed. And I grabbed the shoebox and I just started to write my idea for each chapter, the title of the book. And I kept writing until 6 a.m. And then I called a friend of mine who was a very famous editor in New York. And I said, what do you think of this idea? He said, I think it's brilliant. So I put together a proposal. And then when I finally got one publisher to take a chance on me, and I did that book, it gives us the answer to your second question. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a survivor and a communications expert, right? But I can tell you on a human level that the best way, the way that I did it, and I think for so many people this is true, is turning your pain into power. Not just purpose, but power. So if you can take something, and I tell kids this all across America too, if you can take something that nearly broke you and transform it into something that you help others who are going through the same thing to transcend and to survive, not only does it rewrite your own history, because instead of resenting that bad thing that happened to you, you almost have this awe-inspiring gratitude for it, because you've been able to turn it into something that saves lives or makes a difference. So for anyone who's listening to us and you've gone through something, first of all, therapy for sure. I would be absolutely not where I am without therapy. So a good therapist, right? But you need more than that, because you can get through something, you can forgive, you can heal. To me, if you can take what happened and you can use it to help someone else, whether it's one person or whether you start a movement, which is what my book did. It really did help to start the anti-bullying movement. I was the first voice of the anti-bullying movement. I was the first adult survivor to ever look back on those experiences and speak about them publicly. Now everybody does it, celebrities, everybody else, but I was absolutely the first. And the act of doing that is what healed me. And
Yeah.
so I don't resent that I was bullied as a kid. I'm grateful for it. I wouldn't change anything, even if I could.
I think you answered the question I'm about to ask, but I want to ask it anyway because I think it's important. Where is the line when you are turning your suffering into power between seeking to turn it into power and tipping over and turning it into vengeance?
Oh, that's an easy one. It's about intention. So the answer to that question lies in intention. And it's interesting because one of the things that I teach students, and I also teach it to executives, because believe me, everything that happens in school when it comes to bullying, whether it's rumoring, gossip, exclusion, all of those things, they also happen in the workplace. We may not want to admit that as adults, but I've seen adults in the workplace behaving so much like middle schoolers that I sit there and I'm almost rendered speechless.
I've said for years, we're all just middle schoolers in big bodies.
That's
with
right.
with more responsibility. Yeah.
Yes. That invisible barrier that differentiates between vengeance. And it's three things. It's vengeance, vindication, and empowerment. If it's vengeance, you're doing it because you want to hurt someone, because you want to get back at them, because you want to humiliate them. And that is the wrong place to be, because the only person you hurt is yourself. Because energy begets energy. So negative begets negative, positive begets positive. Turning your pain into power is about letting go and forgiving, and then taking the experience objectively and saying, I got through this, I survived, this is how I did it, and this is how I know you can get through it too. One of the analogies I often use, and by the way, as an aside, not only did many of the kids I went to school with who did bully me, not only did we make amends, but some of them are in my life today. And in fact, we'll talk about what happened when we were younger. And I want to understand their perspective. I want to know what they were thinking, because those insights are what have made my anti-bullying program so unique in the field.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that one of the things I tell kids is that there's a big difference between tattling or snitching and telling. That tattling hurts, telling helps. And it's the same thing about vengeance. If you snitch, that's because you're vengeful. You want to get your bully into trouble, and that doesn't help anyone. But when you tell, you help everyone, because in almost every case, the bully is someone in pain acting out in a cry for help. And in the workplace, it's funny, my most popular professional development session that I do for principals and teachers and superintendents across the country is called How to Handle Parents Who Bully the School, schools who feel bullied by the parents. And I do iterations of that in the corporate world too, how to handle a difficult person, how to handle bullies at work. And the common denominator there is that if someone's being mean to you, it's often not personal. They're afraid and they're of something losing control. They're afraid and they're acting out. And if you can understand that and find your empathy with discernment, you can navigate with grace and get to the other side intact. And I teach that everywhere that'll take me, whether it's a school, a corporation, an association, it doesn't matter. The human heart is the human heart.
Yeah. There's a great book out there that my coach turned me on to called The Anger Trap. And it talks about how anger is really a defensive mechanism or emotion. And if we are feeling angry, it is almost always because somebody or something has caused us to feel like there's a gap in ourselves somewhere. And we want that other person or that other thing to fill that gap, and it's not. And so we get angry and we lash out. Read the book. It's fantastic and makes a lot
Thank
more sense
you.
than
Yeah.
that. But it's interesting. Like when I hear you saying that people who bully, because often bullying comes from an anger inside, whether you're angry at yourself or you're angry at the other person, there's an aggression or an anger that comes out. And often, if you believe in the anger trap, that's coming from some deficit, and they're trying to fill it by bullying you or doing something else, when in reality, the only way to fill it is to realize that you're the only one who can fill it.
The other thing is there are some fundamental differences when you talk about bullying with kids and adolescents and then bullying at the adult level. So there are
Okay.
some differences. That being said, rage, imperiousness, condescension, oppositionally defiant responses, those are for the most part secondary emotions. The primary emotion, and it's really another way of talking about that deficit you just articulated. The primary emotion, O'Brien, is fear. When someone is scared or they feel threatened, they act out. It's a cry for help. That's why, and I work with schools on anti-bullying, but I've also worked in the entertainment business, which is really rough.
There's some bullying happening there for sure.
Yeah. And so I've worked with people who are just, the level of deceitfulness and passive aggressive toxicity in their behavior took my breath away on a daily basis. And I knew I had to survive, and I wasn't going to become less than who I am to get to the other side of this obstacle. So I practiced what I've always preached. I connected with them on a human level with truth and transparency, identified their fear, and worked with them. And some of those people who the first 2 years they knew me would have thrown me under a bus and sold tickets to watch are the ones who now, if I call and say, hey, somebody wants to bring me in for a training or they want me to keynote their conference, would you mind giving me a good word? And those are the people that do it.
Wow. That's powerful. Here's another question I've had for a long time. And I just suddenly realized that you would be a good person to ask this question to.
Well, bring it on.
Yeah. Where is the difference between humor and bullying?
That's a great one. The way kids ask me that question too, and so do grownups. But in many ways, kids are smarter than grownups in certain situations because they have
I don't doubt that.
Right? Bullying isn't defined by the intention or lack of intention of the perpetrator. It's defined by the experience of the recipient. And notice I use the word recipient and not victim, because victim is a judgment. So if you call someone a victim, then you've already tacitly articulated that the other person is a bully. So by saying recipient, it's a neutral term. So if I make a joke, let's say that you and I are coworkers, right? And you've had a really bad weekend and you've had a fight with your spouse and you come to the office already vulnerable. And I'm just joking around because we joke around all the time. And I say something that strikes a nerve just because of the place you're at intrinsically on that particular morning. If it hurt your feelings, if it didn't feel funny to you, then that's not humor. Now, just because I didn't hurt your feelings on purpose, it doesn't mean your feelings weren't hurt. So it's the same thing with humor. Something doesn't have to be on purpose in order for it to be hurtful. What needs to happen in a situation like that is the person who created the hurt, whether or not it was intentional, has to have the grace and confidence to own that they hurt your feelings. And then ideally, you have to have the grace and confidence to accept their apology with dignity and to understand that their hurtfulness wasn't intentional. So it's about meeting in the middle. But just because you think something is funny doesn't make it humorous. It's the person on the other end who defines whether or not it's humorous.
Let me try this on for size and you can tell me how I did. So if I come in and you and I usually joke around and I come in and I make a joke and you find it offensive or hurtful, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a bully at that point. I've just done something that you find hurtful. And if you turn around and tell me that's hurtful, and then I go, oh, you're overreacting, and I make a follow-up joke, now I'm bullying. Now you've expressed yourself and I'm not letting you in, versus I wasn't a bully the first time. And if you go, hey, not today, and I go, oh, I'm sorry, are you doing okay? And then we're repairing and then we're friends. And that,
yes.
So it's not that you're a bully for making the comment in the first place. It's you're a bully when you continue on and you push in a way that you can tell, then it becomes clear that it is hurtful.
Yeah, it's about the curative conversation. So what I mean by that is, if I tell you, hey, look, I'm vulnerable today. I had a rough morning and I'm just really feeling sensitive. And you tell me I'm overreactive, the reason that then becomes judgmentalism. And judgmentalism is a form of bullying. And what most people need in a moment like that is they just need to feel acknowledged. You just need to own it. Gosh, you're right. I didn't mean to be insensitive. I am so sorry. But I get your point. I can see why it would land that way. You're good. But when you throw it back at them, and also people don't know how to apologize. They don't understand what that means at all. I'm sorry if I upset you is not an apology. I'm sorry that you feel that way is not an apology, okay? An apology is, I am sorry that what I said or did was hurtful. I own it. How do we move forward and make things better? That's apology.
I have 2 young boys. I've said this on here one other time, and we watch Daniel Tiger, and which, if you're familiar, is the offshoot of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's an animated show now based on the Daniel Tiger character. And there's an episode in there on apologizing. And it's not just I'm sorry, it's I'm sorry and how can I help make it better? And you can see it play out with my 2 boys, where one will do something to the other and the other one doesn't care that you apologized. Like, you can go, oh, I'm sorry, has no impact on the person who has been hurt. But when they say, I'm sorry, what can I do? How can I help? Then they get to articulate, don't ever do that again, or I'd like you to go clean that up, or I want you to do something. You can see then they have the physical reaction that it helps and they get better. So it is, I just want to reinforce it again. Like, it's not just the I'm sorry, it's the I'm sorry and what can I do to be better in the future?
You're a very good dad, by the way, I can tell. So
just because I've had a few insights through failure does not doesn't qualify me one way or the other.
Some people get worse with failure. So listen, take the wins as they come.
We're all just doing our best.
It's interesting that you mention all this because it immediately comes to mind. I just did a bunch of keynotes for HR Association just recently, like a whole string of them. And one of the things that always comes up is defensiveness. What do you do when someone's putting you on the defensive? And this is something I teach this to kids in a way they can grasp, but I teach it to adults all the time, administrators and executives. It's called ascending conversations versus descending conversations. So have you ever been in a situation, O'Brien, where you're trying to have a productive dialogue with somebody, but it's like they're gunning for a fight. It's like no matter what you say, they have an oppositional reply. It's like they want to put you on the defensive. They want to poke your
Yeah, of
boat.
course. Anyone who's dealt with people have had that situation. Yeah.
That's called a descending conversation. And what's really going on there, the actual dynamic, is that the person who's doing that is afraid. They feel a lack of control. So they want to bring you down to where they are, which is a scared, disorganized place, because then they feel that they have a quality with you there. So that's what they're trying to do. An ascending conversation is when you reach your hand down, you pull that person up to this level with you. Now, how do you do that? Step number one is that you need to say to this person, you acknowledgement. I see that you're upset. I hear that you're upset. Talk to me. Help me understand your point of view. I want to understand. And then remain silent and listen with compassionate neutrality. Don't interrupt. Be aware of your body language, because if they see judgmentalism in your expressions or your shoulders or your eye movement, it will sabotage the whole thing. So just listen with compassionate neutrality. Then, after they've expressed their point of view, rephrase it back to them in your own words and ask their help in doing that. Be earnest and say, okay, what I'm hearing that you're trying to tell me is this. Do I have that right? Is that correct? And watch their body language change and watch them begin to ascend. And here's the other thing. There is a myth about human nature that when you're in an escalating conversation with someone and someone's voice is starting to get shrill, you don't understand. And it feels like, if you're on the receiving end of that, that they're bullying you into agreeing with them, that they want to convince you they're right and they want you to agree with them. But that's a myth. That's really not what's going on. It's not agreement that the other person is seeking. They may think that's what it is, but that's not what it is. It's that you understand where they're coming from, that you've understood where they're coming from. You can agree to disagree, but the other person has to believe that you genuinely understand their point of view. And the next time you're in this situation, or someone listening to us is in this situation, try that technique and watch their body language. The minute they feel understood, look what happens to their shoulders. Watch what happens to their neck. It is palpable. And I think that, like your example with your sons, which is so cute, because you're teaching them how to be active listeners and active apologizers, which is fabulous.
Daniel Tiger is teaching them. I'm just reinforcing it.
Daniel Tiger's very lucky to have you in his court.
I'm just playing support to Daniel Tiger.
That's great.
You've hit on this point, but I want to take it maybe one step further too, which is, how do we help people around us who are prone to have those reactions build grit and perseverance and hardiness? Because there's a truth out there that people do get bullied and that they are made to feel these ways. And there's also a truth out there that we have the ability to choose our reactions and that we can claim our own power, like you were talking about before, and we can be empowered and emboldened by these things and actually made stronger through them by choosing to take that approach. And so how do we take somebody who is feeling at the bottom, who has descended, and not just be able to have a hard conversation with them, but actually lean into them and start to help them build that resilience back?
So how to facilitate sustained, evolved resiliency over time.
Yeah.
Okay, a few ways that you can do that. Step number one is to have a conversation with them about their communication style. And in fact, let's say that you report, your direct reporter, you report to the CEO all the time. Everybody in the workplace, you have something, and in life too, you have something that I call communication stakeholders. These are the people or groups of people with whom you communicate on a regular basis. So have a conversation with your communication stakeholders and ask them, talk about your communication styles. How do you like to how do you process information? Do you tend to be chattier and like to ease into a difficult conversation, or are you more of a bottom line person? Do you tend to like to see something on paper first so you can think about it before you have a conversation? Or would you rather have the conversation first and then see something on paper that encapsulates it? Have honest, open conversations about their communication style and know your own communication style. Are you a direct bottom line kind of a person, or are you more of a soft skills leaning person? Know your style, communicate with these other people about their communication style, because what happens there in situations where there could be a challenge or where that may be an issue, you already know each other's style. So you can say, they might say to you, listen, I know you're a bottom line person and you like the bottom line, but today we've got to lean into my style because there's a backstory here that you're going to need for context. So that you acknowledge each other's styles. And not only does that mitigate anxiety and angst and miscommunication, but over time you grow and you have a growing respect and appreciation for each other's styles. You learn from each other. So if you're direct and bottom line, they learn a little bit more how to do that, and maybe they get a thicker skin. But if they're more soft skills leaning and more empathy driven, then you're getting some of that, and together you enrich each other. And the other thing that you can do in a situation like that is one of my favorites. It's called the 3 steps for responding instead of reacting. And if you do it with somebody and you exemplify it enough, over time, they will do it too. And you can even teach them how to do it. Step 1, stop. Just stop. If something is escalating, stop. Step 2, process. That means ask yourself, why am I really upset right now? Because sometimes the reason that we're really upset isn't really why we're upset. It's just triggering something. Step 3, most important thing, ask yourself, 20 years from now, when I look back on this moment, how will I wished I would have handled it? And if your answer to that is consistent with your answers to step 1 and 2, then your response has passed the litmus test. If not, go back and do the steps over. And the qualifying litmus test for if you've done that correctly is, again, 20 years from now, when I look back on this moment. Because when you ask yourself that question in any situation, you're summoning your higher self.
Yeah.
And your higher self will always give you the right answer.
Yeah. Another thing I said in a recent conversation like this on the show, I had heard a comedian ask his dad on his wedding night for advice, and his dad said, always say the third thing. And he said, well, yeah. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, whatever the first thing is that comes to your mind is wrong. That's not the thing that should come out of your mouth. And then you're going to think, oh, I know what I should say instead. And that is also the wrong thing. Let those 2 things go and say the third thing. When you finally calm down, then the third thing presents itself. Figure out whatever the third thing is and say that's how you sustain a healthy relationship.
That is that should be on the refrigerator of every married couple in America. That's really good. The other thing, because you're talking about building resiliency in people, is really understanding each other's communication styles, and talking about that is really important, because sometimes you may think someone's not resilient. It's not that they're not resilient. It's that their communication style is intrinsically so different than your own that they're immediately nervous when they have to talk to you. So by having that conversation, it takes a lot of the toxic air out of the balloon. And also, lastly, one other cool tip, and this is anti-bullying and everything else, lead with truth and compassion. So ever have a situation where you're dreading a conversation and you rehearse it in your head, or you're like your spouse, can you walk me through how I'm going to address this tomorrow? Ever have that? Here's a trick for that. Ask yourself, what is my truth? What is my truth in this situation as I see it right now? And be brutally honest with yourself, right? That's truth to power, overrated. Truth to self, that's the ultimate superpower. So ask yourself that question. Then ask yourself, okay, I've identified my truth. Now, what's the most compassionate lens through which I can see that truth? Because if you can see it compassionately, if you can see it through the other person's shoes, you'll automatically communicate it that way. You won't have to worry about your words because they'll just be there, because what you see is how you'll speak. It's like when you're teaching a kid how to ride a bike. You don't say, don't look where you don't want to go, because that's where they will end up. Look at where you do want to go and go there.
Yeah. One other thing about that I have found to be particularly helpful. Are you familiar with Byron Katie and The Work?
Oh,
Have you
no.
heard of that? So I think I came across this through the Tim Ferriss podcast. He's talked about it a bunch of times on there. But Byron Katie, The Work, it's 4 questions to reframe thoughts and beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves. Because inevitably what can happen is we tell ourselves a truth that is true, but it's not helpful. I just lost us this basketball game, right? Let's take an easy example. I just lost us this basketball game because I missed the last shot, right? I lost us the game. Okay, that's a truth. What else is true? Our team didn't put up enough points during the game to win. We didn't play defense well, and we didn't stop them as a team, right? So there are all of these other truths generally that are all competing at the same time, and they're all true. And we get to choose which ones we latch onto and internalize. And it's just a great process for going through and sort of pressure testing a belief to find alternatives that are also true, but maybe more true. And what I have found is I've done this with my coach a few times, and I'll have something that just is like, I think this is true. Like, this is a negative thing, but it's true. And then all of a sudden, another truth will appear and it'll just click. And the new one clicks in and the other one just unclicks and it just drops away. And yes, maybe it was still a bad outcome, but it's such a more productive belief. And I don't know, anyway, I just want to share that because it's been helpful for me, and hopefully it's helpful for listeners. It's easy to do, very easy to do.
I think it's brilliant. And I also think that we curate our clothing, we curate what we're going to eat, we curate everything in our lives. We're the curators of our minute to minute existence, curating our beliefs, curating our truths, because 2 or 3 truths can be true at the same time. They're not all mutually exclusive. And I think too that, and I see this with kids and I see this with adults when they're behaving immaturely, is that as human beings, for some odd reason, maybe it's because we were chased by saber-toothed tigers 100,000 years ago, but we tend to gravitate towards the negative. It tends to be the place, like I love it, like when I do parenting classes, I love it, I'll say, when you lead with the negative, that's where you're going to go. If you don't do this, then this will be the consequence. What do you expect? You're leading with the negative. The tacit message there is, I don't believe that you're going to do the right thing of your own volition. So I'm going to use this scary word to make sure that you do it. Whereas I think it's better, and a lot of educators agree with me on this, but I think it's better to lead with a positive. If you do this, then this will be our result. And lead with the positive, the outcome of what will happen if you do the right thing. And then conversely, if you do this, then this will be our result. And then articulate the negative. But I think as people, we're so, like, I never use the word problem. I always use the word challenge, because problem makes you want to retreat, right? Challenge makes you want to rise to the challenge. And I think with your example about choosing your truth, I think that's brilliant. That would be a good one for your kids too. That's a good one.
Well, so I was just writing that down because you gave me credit for the Daniel Tiger one. I'll give it back and lose credit on this one, where I do tend to lead with the negative consequence. And I really struggle sometimes with that. And hey, if we don't do this is what's going to happen. I'm going to count down from 5. Like, I probably over index on that tactic. So I wrote that down. I'm going to have to lead with the positive.
You want another cool parenting tip before we close? It's really fun. Okay. It's good. You ready? is very good. And the adult equivalent of this, there's an adult equivalent too, but I've interviewed thousands of kids around the country, and I ask them questions about grownups. And one of the questions I ask is, give me a phrase that adults use on you that really makes you mad. And they all give me the same answer. Oh, when adults says, we'll see, because they know that's grown-up speak for leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered right now. And every time we use it, it makes the kid feel this big. And bear in mind, there are 3 tenets of emotional credibility and communication: specificity, immediacy, and semantic/positioning. Well, this speaks to specificity. So the next time anybody's listening, who's listening, your child is bugging you about something, if you have a kid, not that they ever would, but just say, perhaps they're bugging you about something. Instead of saying, we'll see, do this. Say, I can't give you an answer right this second. I need time to process my decision. Because think about it. We say we'll see because we want to buy time. We don't want to promise something and disappoint them. So say, I can't give you an answer right now. I need time to process my decision. Then agree upon a time and a place where you will reconvene and give them your decision. Then say, before we conclude right now, I'd like you to explain to me specifically why this thing you're asking of me is so important to you. And then let them explain. It's probably going to be ridiculous. Don't interrupt. We tend to try to turn every listening moment into a teaching moment, and we need to not do that. This is a listening moment. Even if their answer is ridiculous, the teaching moment will come. Just listen and let them get it out. And listen with compassionate neutrality. Don't show judgment in your body language. After they've concluded, say, thank you for sharing that information with me. It will play an important role in my final decision. Then when you give them your decision, if the answer is yes, explain specifically how you got there. If it's no, do the same thing. The real reward for this child isn't the yes, even if that's what you give them. It's that you were specific about what your decision process would be. You were specific with them on a timeline. You allowed them a specific participatory role, and you were specific on how you came to your conclusion. Simultaneously, you started teaching them about prioritization, acculturating them to how that works. And you also bought yourself the same wiggle room as we'll see. You didn't commit to something, but by using the tool of specificity, you made your child feel validated instead of dismissed. And that translates into the workplace. One of the worst things you can say to an upset client or an upset adult is, I'll get back to you. Because even though we think that we're being responsible communicators, to the person on the other side, it can feel like you're trying to manage them or power hoard. So if we can remember,
or you're being dismissive.
Yeah. So if we can remember how we experienced certain moments as kids and tap into that when we're dealing with adults, or how we feel as adults, kids could teach us more than we think.
Yeah. Jodee, this has been fantastic. This has been wonderful. My favorite episodes on here are where the lessons just come and they're all smushed together from work and life. And it's just, how do you deal with people? And I think that's really what we've been talking about here. It's like kids, adults, coworkers, spouses, whatever. Humans are humans, and the way that we treat them, the way that we communicate with them, the way that they treat us, if we can elevate that experience, everybody's better for it. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing so much good stuff on how to do that.
I am so honored that you invited me. That's actually a really good name for a podcast, The Shmush. That's
The
really
Shmush.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I'm so honored that you invited me to come, and I'm just so honored to know you. I think the work you're doing is extraordinary, and I think you're really helping listeners. And if anyone is interested in working with me or finding out about my corporate trainings and keynotes or the stuff I do for schools and in education, I'll give you my landing page and they can just visit, and I'm more reachable than their dentist.
Yeah. And I always encourage people, the people that I bring on this show are very reachable. They do this for a living. Like, this is what they do, and they want to help people do it. So if you're listening to this and you need help from Jodee in any way, definitely reach out. Look at the show notes for this episode and you'll find ways to connect with her.
Thank you so much, O'Brien. I'm so honored and privileged that you invited me on, and I really enjoyed it. You are really good.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. And I know you caught a red eye last night, so you performed remarkably sharp for having little sleep. So thank you. Thank you to everybody listening. And as always, just hope this helps elevate your human interaction.
Bye, everybody.
Hey folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.